There are moments in a woman's life when silence weighs heavier than words. He looks at you, not with a fleeting glance of desire, but with something slower, deeper, more unsettled. He speaks casually, yet his body betrays a gravity he cannot name. You sense it. The difference between a man who seeks only fire for the night and a man who longs to anchor his soul beside yours. But how do you know? How do you discern whether his presence is a mask for temporary pleasure or a mirror of something eternal? Carl Jung would say, the unconscious always reveals itself. The body, the gestures, the slips of voice, the way his archetypes stir, these are not accidents. They are signals. They are the language of a man's deeper longing. If you know how to see, a man who wants only fun will play in the shallow waters, never daring to dive. His gaze will sparkle but not linger. His hand will reach, but they will not tremble. His voice will promise, but his life will remain untouched by you. His shadow resists union, for it knows union demands death to ego. He will hover at the edges, never stepping fully into fire. But a man who wants a serious relationship does not remain untouched. Attraction does not end in desire. It disrupts his order. It unsettles his peace. It drags him into confrontation with the anima he has long suppressed. He feels both longing and fear, both hunger and surrender. He is not simply enchanted by you, he is haunted. This haunting is a sign, not in words, not in rehearsed declarations, but in behaviors too ancient to disguise, behaviors that come from the unconscious, where archetype whispers and shadow stirs, behaviors that show he is not here to consume, but to bind, not to play, but to build, not to escape, but to be transformed. And you, standing at the threshold of his attention, must decide whether you will merely bask in the warmth of his pursuit, or whether you will meet him in the crucible of serious love, where ego dissolves and true connection begins. For love, when real, is not entertainment. It is initiation. It is sacrifice. It is the alchemy that calls two souls not into escape, but into awakening. The first current of seriousness, transparency. The man who comes only for pleasure arrives in armor. His words shimmer. His gestures entertain, but behind them there is no revelation. His shadow remains untouched, sealed away. He wants you to see the mask, not the man. His life remains a closed door. His inner world a landscape you are never permitted to enter, such as a nature's shallow attachment. It feeds on illusion, never risking exposure. But the man who wants something deeper cannot keep the door closed for long. His attraction is not a performance. It is a summons, and it rattles the mask until it cracks. Jung called this the confrontation with the persona, the face one shows to the world. A serious love does not tolerate the mask. It demands a man reveal what lies beneath. And so, if his intention is real, you will feel it in his transparency. He will not merely show you the polished victories, the career, the charm, the laughter that pleases a crowd. He will show you the wounds that shaped him, the betrayals that haunt him, the dreams that scare him more than they inspire. He does not share these because it flatters him. He shares them because his psyche knows instinctively. Love cannot grow in concealment. This is not to say his vulnerability pours out recklessly. Transparency is not exhibitionism. It is sacrifice. It costs him. It unsettles him. For a man taught to equate masculinity with control, with stoicism, with unflinching strength, to reveal the cracks is to step into humiliation. And yet when attraction becomes serious, the anima within him whispers, if she is to truly see me, she must see not the mask but the wound beneath. And so his speech changes. He pauses before speaking, not because he doubts you, but because he dares to risk truth. He admits to his fears, not as weakness, but as offering. He speaks not only of what he desires, but of what is lost, of the ghosts that still walk behind him. This transparency is not simply communication. It is archetypal unveiling. It is the hero laying down his sword before the altar of intimacy. It is the shadow daring to step into light. And for you, the woman before him, the question rises. Do you see his unveiling as proof of his devotion, or do you mistake it for a trap? For transparency is double-edged. It can stir your compassion, awakening your feminine gift to nurture, to hold, but it can also tempt you into collapse, into believing you must save him. Jung would warn here. The projection of the wounded man can seduce the feminine shadow into mothering, into sacrificing herself to heal what he must face alone. Thus, when you encounter transparency, the empowered feminine does not rush to fix nor to flee. She receives it with clarity. She recognizes it as a sign, not as weakness, but of his seriousness. For a man who only wants fun will never risk showing his wounds. A A man who longs for depth will tremble as he places them in your hands. And here, you must listen not only to his words, but to his silence, to the pauses that betray his fear, to the steady breath before confession. These are the rhythms of a soul exposing itself. And no man does this for passing entertainment. He does it because, consciously or unconsciously, he envisions a bond that demands honesty. This is the first current of seriousness, the willingness to stand unmasked, not perfect, not invulnerable, but real. And in that realness, the seed of devotion is planted. The man who seeks only distraction never lingers in silence. He fills the air with words, with jokes, with surfaces meant to cover the emptiness beneath. But the man who yearns for depth is not afraid of quiet. He is not afraid to sit with you in the pauses, to allow the weight of silence to carve a space between two souls where truth can breathe. In those still moments, he is not planning his escape, not plotting his next conquest. He is present entirely, as though your being itself is a mirror in which he dares to see his own hidden reflection. Carl Jung once whispered of the anima, the eternal feminine inside every man, often buried, often feared. When a man treats you only as a body, he resists her presence. He represses the voice of the anima that stirs inside him. But when he is ready for something deeper, he no longer runs from that call. He senses that being near you awakens something both terrifying and holy, his own shadow rising, demanding to be faced. It is why seriousness in love is never just about romance. It is initiation. It is the confrontation of what he has avoided in himself. Look closely when he listens, not just with his ears, but with his eyes, his posture, the tension in his hands. The man who is ready to commit does not only hear your words, he receives them. They land inside him like seeds in dark soil. He carries them, allows them to grow roots. He remembers small details, not because he wants to impress you, but because they have etched themselves into his inner world. For him, your presence is not noise. It is a compass, pointing him toward a truth he cannot find alone. But beware, for projection is a powerful trickster. A man may project upon you the goddess he longs for, but has not yet integrated. He may worship you, idealize you, place you upon a throne only to later despise you when reality pierces the dream. This, too, is not seriousness, it is fantasy. The serious man, the one who dares a love beyond desire, begins to see you as both divine and human, both radiant and flawed. He does not need you to be perfect. He needs you to be real, so that together he can be real too. There is a certain softness in his gaze when he crosses that threshold. It is not the gaze of hunger, but of recognition. It is as if he knows, perhaps without words, that you are not just a woman before him, but an invitation to become whole, to wrestle with his brokenness, to step out of the boyhood games of conquest and into the storm of manhood, where love is no longer play, but sacrifice, devotion, surrender. And here, you must also ask yourself, are you ready to be met in that storm? For to attract a man who truly wants depth is to awaken his shadow and your own. To be seen fully is not only intoxicating, it is dangerous. It asks you to lay down the mask you have worn, to let the armor fall, to let him see the parts of you that are not polished, not pleasing, not performed. This is why seriousness in love is always a threshold of fear. For him and for you, there's a way a man begins to reorder his world when he is serious. Not in grand declarations, not in promises shouted into wind, but in the subtle rearrangements of his life. The man who is passing through leaves no room for you. His days remain untouched, his priorities unbent. But the man who is ready to tether himself to something greater will bend time itself. He will carve out space, even when it costs him. He will alter his rituals, his routines, as though some quiet force inside him whispers that you are no longer an afterthought, but a part of the architecture of his becoming. It is not merely about scheduling or about texts that arrive on time. It is about alignment. When he is serious, he begins to align his inner world with yours. This is not the shallow compromise of convenience. It is a recognition that his path is no longer solitary. He starts to imagine you in the future he once saw only for himself. The man who once envisioned only freedom, only conquest, begins to speak of stability, of roots, of journeys walked side by side. Jung knew that the ego resists anything that threatens its illusion of control. Commitment does exactly this. It shatters the myth of sovereignty, the fantasy that a man can remain untouched by love and still be whole. So when a man begins to open his hands, to release the fortress of his independence, you are witnessing not weakness, but courage. For in truth, it is easier to remain untethered. It is safer to remain alone. To merge with another is to risk dissolution. to step into the unknown where one's identity must be remade. And yet, the man who wants more than fun is willing to take that risk. He is no longer ruled entirely by impulse, by the fleeting intoxication desire. Instead, he is guided by a deeper hunger, one that stretches beyond the surface. This hunger is not for your body alone, but for your essence, for the mystery of your being, for the strange and untamed terrain that lies beyond what he can control. There is sacrifice in this shift. He will give up certain freedoms, not because you demand it, but because his soul has begun to reorient itself around something greater. The archetype of the wanderer yields to the archetype of the lover. The boy who once ran from responsibility steps aside for the man who knows that true intimacy is not a cage, but a mirror, reflecting back to him both his light and his shadow. But understand this. Such seriousness is fragile in its birth. It flickers like a candle in the wind, easily extinguished by fear, by old wounds, by the weight of unhealed trauma. Do not mistake the flame for permanence. At first, it is tentative, uncertain, a test of his own capacity to hold something sacred. Only over time does it grow steady. Only through patience does it endure. And so you must learn to read not only his words, but the quiet revolutions inside his life. Where does he place you in his world? Is there space made for you, not as an ornament, but as a pillar? Does he draw you into his circle, into the fabric of his days? Or are you always waiting at the edge, kept outside the sanctuary's real self? For the man who is serious, the walls come down, the gates open, and you are invited into the kingdom he once ruled alone. There is another sign, quieter yet more profound, that reveals itself not in words or gestures, but in the way he begins to carry responsibility. The man who seeks only amusement will shy away from weight. He will avoid the heaviness of consequence, the burden of another's heart. He will laugh at the idea of permanence, or shift the conversation when it brushes against anything too real. But the man who longs for depth does not recoil. He steps toward it, even if his steps tremble. Responsibility is not glamorous. It does not shine like attraction, nor intoxicate like desire. It is sober, steady, at times even heavy. Yet it is in this weight that love becomes more than a spark. Jung wrote of individuation as a journey toward wholeness, a merging of light and shadow, a reconciliation of the inner world. In much the same way, when a man desires a serious union, he accepts that love is not merely pleasure. It is discipline, it is endurance, it is a willingness to be transformed through another. You can feel this in the way he begins to consider your needs alongside his own, not as performance, not as a tactic to win favor, but as a natural extension of his evolving soul. He no longer asks only, "What do I want?" but "What do we require?" This shift may seem small, yet it is seismic. It is the movement from ego to union, from self to shared being. There is a sacred quality in the man who chooses to shoulder responsibility willingly. He begins to watch his words more carefully, not out of fear, but out of respect for the weight they carry within you. He notices the ripple of his actions, the way they echo in the chambers of your heart. The unconscious boy may live as if nothing matters, but the man on the threshold of love realizes that everything matters. Each promise, each silence, each presence or absence becomes a thread in the tapestry of what you are weaving together. This is not the false responsibility born of control or domination, the toxic demand that you carry his burdens while he remains unexamined. No, this is different. This is a responsibility that emerges from a man who has stared into his own shadow and acknowledged the damage he can cause if he remains careless. He understands that intimacy is fragile, that hearts are not toys, that souls are not disposable. To you, it may appear in subtle ways. The way he remembers what you said in passing, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The way he shows up when it is inconvenient, choosing your well-being over his comfort. The way he begins to think beyond the moment, not merely in the sweetness of now, but in the horizon of what could be. And yet, you must hold awareness here. Responsibility does not mean perfection. A man can desire seriousness and still stumble, still falter beneath the weight of his own unfinished work. What matters is not flawlessness, but direction. Does he rise after he falls? Does he reflect and just seek to grow? Or does he remain trapped in denial, excusing his neglect while demanding your loyalty? In the end, seriousness in love is revealed not by passion alone, but by his willingness to take on quiet, uncelebrated labor devotion. That is where you see whether he stands at the edge of true intimacy, or whether he lingers only for the thrill of the surface. There comes a moment in the unfolding of attraction when his gaze shifts from the fleeting pleasures of the body to the deeper textures of your inner world. This is one of the most luminous signs, for the man who seeks only fun will keep you upon the surface, admiring your beauty, consuming your presence, but never truly hungering for the essence beneath. But when seriousness blooms within him, his curiosity becomes profound. He wants to know you, not only the image you show to the world, but the hidden chambers where your soul keeps its secrets. He listens, not with the half attention of one waiting to speak, but with the silence of one who understands that every word you reveal is a piece of the map leading toward the real you. He remembers your stories, not as casual anecdotes, but as threads he carefully gathers into his understanding of who you are. He inquires, gently but persistently, into what shaped you, into the shadows you have wrestled with, into the longings that move beneath your calm. Jung taught that the anima and animus are mirrors, calling forth from one another the unacknowledged depths of the psyche. When a man grows serious, he begins to see you not simply as an object of desire, but as a mirror that reflects his own unfinished soul. Your depths awaken his depths. Your vulnerability summons his. Your mystery invites him into the territory he has long avoided within himself. This is why his questions carry weight. They are not idle curiosities. They are signals of his readiness to meet you beyond masks. He begins to notice the way your voice trembles when you speak of loss. He notices the silence that follows when you recall old wounds. He does not turn away from these revelations. He leans into them. He desires not only the joy of your laughter, but the gravity of your grief, the contradictions that make you whole. A man seeking only play will fear your complexity. He will shy away from anything that demands emotional courage. But a man who is serious will welcome it. Even if it unsettles him, he stays. Even if he does not know how to hold it perfectly, he tries. For to him, your inner landscape is not a burden, but a temple. To be invited inside is not an obligation, but a gift. And here, too, is where you must discern. Does he ask to know your depths while withholding his own? Does he collect your stories without offering his truths in return? For true seriousness is reciprocal. The man who wants only to consume will take your vulnerability and use it for power. But the man who is ready for union will respond with his own vulnerability, trembling but real. He will let you see his shadow, his fears, his fractured places, because he knows that intimacy cannot breathe in one-sided exposure. What emerges in this stage is a sacred dialogue. Two souls, shedding their armor, stepping into the raw light of truth. And though the world may not see it, though there are no crowds to applaud, this is where love is tested and born. It is not in grand gestures, but in the courage to be naked, not only in body, but in spirit. This hunger to know you, truly know you, is the mark of a man who seeks more than the temporary. It is a stirring of an archetype far greater than desire. It is a lover archetype in its purest form, yearning not merely for pleasure, but for union, for communion, for the dissolving of walls between two beings who dare to meet without mask. There is also the way he begins to reveal himself, not in fragments, not in carefully polished performances, but in the raw contours of his being. The man who seeks only fleeting pleasure hides behind masks. He shows the image he knows will dazzle, the strength that will impress, the charm that will entice. But when seriousness stirs within him, the masks grow heavy. He can no longer maintain only the facade, for his soul craves to be seen as it is, not as it pretends to be. This unveiling is never immediate. At first, it comes in glimmers. The hesitation in his voice when he speaks of his past, the flicker of vulnerability when he admits his fears. Slowly, the walls lower. He reveals his wounds, the ones he has carried in silence. He confesses the regrets that gnaw at him, the failures he once swore to bury. He shows you the parts of himself that he has long believed unlovable. Jung would call this the encounter with shadow, the moment when the unconscious, long denied, rises to the surface seeking light. A man who longs for depth does not conceal his shadow from you forever. He knows, even if only instinctively, that no relationship can be real unless it holds the whole of him. He offers it not to burden you, but to test whether you can see his darkness without recoiling, whether you can love him in his incompletion. And here's the paradox. To reveal one's shadow is both a risk and a gift, for in showing his brokenness, he risks rejection. Yet if you meet it with compassion, he receives something rarer than desire. He receives acceptance, and acceptance is the seed from which true intimacy grows. Do not mistake this for weakness. It is far easier for a man to keep the mask intact, to remain the hero in his own story, untouched by criticism, admired from a safe distance. It takes courage to kneel before another soul and say, "Here's my fracture, here's my fear, here's the place where I am undone." When he does this, know that it is not casual. He does not reveal his rawness to those who are temporary. He saves this unveiling for the one whose presence feels like sanctuary. And you, in turn, must discern carefully. Not every man who reveals his shadow is seeking to rise into love. Some reveal their wounds to manipulate, to tether you to their brokenness while refusing to heal. The serious man does not glorify his pain. He does not ask you to carry what is his to resolve. Instead, he invites you into his struggle as a companion, not a savior. He shows you where he bleeds, but he also shows you his willingness to heal. This is the alchemy of serious love. Shadow meeting shadow, light meeting light. Two beings, not perfect, not whole, but willing to journey together toward a deeper wholeness. It is a path of truth, not illusion. A path of surrender, not performance. When he begins to let you see his unguarded self, you are no longer dealing with a man who wants only fun. You are standing before someone who dares to be seen. And in that daring, he whispers a vow, not in words, but in the language of soul, that he is ready for something greater than fleeting pleasure. He is ready for the intimacy that remakes both of you. There is a final sign, one that rarely announces itself with words, yet radiates through every gesture, every silence, every look that lingers a heartbeat too long. It is not the thrill of pursuit, not the intoxication of conquest, but the quiet gravity of devotion. A man who wants only fun may dazzle, may excite, may sweep you into a whirlwind of moments, but he remains untethered. His energy scatters like sparks that light the night and vanish. But when he is serious, his energy changes. It grounds, it steadies. It orbits you as though some unseen law of nature has pulled him into a deeper center. You feel it when his presence no longer feels accidental, but chosen. He is not merely passing through your days. He is anchoring himself within them. He becomes a witness to your life, not only in its brilliance, but in its ordinariness. He does not stand only at the threshold of your beauty. He enters into the sacred monotony of your routines, the rawness of your moods, the silences where there are no words to impress. And still he stays. This is a sign beyond all others. The man who seeks seriousness will offer consistency. Not perfection, not endless excitement, but the steady hum of one who has decided to remain. Jung might have called this the moment when the anima guides a masculine into wholeness, when the fantasy of eternal freedom gives way to the wisdom of rootedness. For what is devotion, if not the willingness to let one's soul be reshaped by commitment? In the language of Stoicism, this is where impulse yields to discipline. He does not show up because desire burns hot. He shows up because he has chosen to. Choice. That is the essence of seriousness. The boy chases what feels good. The man returns to what he's vowed, even when it challenges him. You will see this in the way his eyes no longer search for exits when conflict arises, in the way his hands do not withdraw when your tears fall, in the way he holds you, not as an ornament to his ego, but as a partner in his becoming. He does not measure what he gains against what he gives. He measures only whether he is building something that can last. And perhaps most of all, you will feel in the way he carries you within his vision. When he speaks of tomorrow, you are there. When he imagines a home, a journey, a horizon, your presence is woven into it as naturally as breath. The man who seeks only fun cannot see beyond the next dawn. The man who longs for union sees you in the seasons yet to come. This, then, is the culmination of all signs, not lust, not thrill, but devotion. Devotion is the language of the soul when it has outgrown games. Devotion is the quiet power of a man who has stopped running from himself, and thus no longer runs from love. And so the question turns toward you. Can you feel the difference? Can you discern when his energy is scattered and when it is steady? Can you tell when his presence is performance and when it is vow? For in the end, the signs are not hidden. They are etched in every choice he makes, in every silence he keeps, in every moment he chooses to stay when leaving will be easier. When a man has reached this place, you are no longer standing in the shadow of fleeting pleasure. You are standing at the threshold of something that carries weight, something that demands courage, something that holds the possibility of transformation. Seriousness is not light, it is fire, and if he is ready, you will feel the warmth of it, not in the words he speaks, but in the way his very being begins to orbit yours, steady and unwavering, like a star that has finally found its constellation. If these signs stirred something in you, if they awaken recognition or reveal the difference between fleeting desire and true devotion, do not let the insight dissolve into silence. Carry it with you, protect it, let it sharpen your discernment and deepen your worth. And if this journey spoke to your soul, linger with us. Subscribe so that the wisdom of Jung, the power of shadow work, and the secrets of feminine empowerment continue to meet you here. Share this with another woman who longs to see clearly, Who is tired of illusions? Who deserves more than temporary affection? Your story is not meant to be written in half-light. It is meant to burn with clarity, with depth, with devotion. Join this community, where we honor love not as a game, but as a path of transformation. The signs are there. The choice is yours.